join the channel here over at Subscribestar, buy me a coffee, the various other links. So what happened to the de-influencing trend just proves why we need it by some idiot at the Mary Sue. Now, here's the thing. Well, first of all, the de-influence movement, this is a much, much bigger issue than I think they are aware of, the type of people who are at the Mary Sue. This is saying the concept of influence is a deep, deep issue that is never going to be allowed. Like a de-influencing movement, for a reason I'll explain in a second. Every once in a while, the left wing stumbles across good ideas, but then they find a way to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. So I agree with the Mary Sue in this regard. But keep in mind, if you want to manipulate the left, all you have to do is agree with them. You can have adopt a rescue kitten day. If the right pushes this, well, the left will have a stimulus response reaction. They'll find that rescue kitten adoption is a far right-wing value, that we want to dress them up in little Hugo Boss outfits and teach them to Roman salute, Kitty Waffen style. Sometimes you can step back from the matrix and see the manipulation. And if you're ever curious about what narratives get pushed and what doesn't, a good example of the machine in action is when Alyssa Milano started, I think, Me Too. It was huge for like a year or so. A bunch of Hollywood types got taken down. Then it slowly disappeared. And some politicians too. There were still reports of Weinstein's doing their abuse in Hollywood. And the reports got out there, but they didn't get boosted like they used to. The energy was taken out of the movement. So what happened? Well, I mean, let's examine these two related issues. A movement against abuse in Hollywood or in politics is going to catch 99% left-wing people. In some way or another, they're going to be tied into the left wing as donors to the DNC or something like that. Because that's part of the worldview difference between the left and the right. The left believes in degeneracy and filth. It's a value they move towards. That's part of the liberal mindset. It's the concept of do as thou wishes. It's the left-hand path. The concept of conservatism is tribalism, family, blood tribe, nation. It needs stability in a patriarchy to allow it to work. The right isn't pushing children to take hormones and dance around for the pleasure of men. And don't get me wrong, the so-called in quotes rights will also get called out by, I remember the Charlie Kirk interview where the Groypers were walking up and asking Charlie Kirk some very pointed questions, and he didn't have answers for him. And you realize like, it's kind of weird that so you're on the right and you're dodging these questions and you don't have answers to these pertinent questions that are of concern because people are asking them, and you're not answering those questions. You're not really on the right if you're afraid to answer these questions that are dealing with the concept of what it means to be conservative. So the left doesn't have. I mean, that's what's in those con ops, the Matt Walsh, the Charlie Kirks of the world. So the left doesn't have anything they believe in. That's why they keep slipping down the slippery slope from the marriage issue from 25 years ago to drag queens for kids to the horrors that they'll be doing in the future. Very, very shortly, they'll be doing things that you just would not imagine. I only say that because go back 20, 30 years and think to the things they're doing right now. If they told you 30 years ago what they'd be doing now, you wouldn't have believed it. Well, it's the same. I mean, the stuff they're going to be doing in 5 years, things accelerate. It's not linear. I think it's exponential. So nothing can internally stop them because they don't have a core dogma. The right has, on one hand, Christianity, and on the other, they have kind of a paganism / ancestor reverence sort of thing. But they do have some core dogma. They have something that they can attach continuity to. The concept of either one of those beliefs horrifies the left because cultural Marxism won't allow them to love their tribe and have in-group preferences. Only other groups may have those. The left must hate themselves and have out-group preferences. And it's insane when you stop to think about it. The past 5 years have changed my perspective so much. I have become very in-group focused. It's been an exciting transformation. I know some of you are going through the same thing. Anyway, so hashtag Me Too and Time's Up all had to disappear because it was destroying the narrative of Blonde Man Bad. The truth was that left-wing men and women, didn't Leslie Headland work with Weinstein, were the ones who were abusing people, at least in the vast majority of cases. Because on the right wing, you had guys like what's that guy, Mike Pence, who wouldn't be around women. Like you have some of that mentality where they just would the appearance of impropriety, and the left wing women are like, oh well, how ridiculous of it is Mike Pence not to trust women? Are you saying like so? I mean, the argument is like, so women always tell the truth. Yeah, well, yeah, hashtag believe women. So women always tell the truth. I mean, do men always tell the truth? I mean, what do you? Isn't that Isn't that why you have the concept of due process? None of their arguments make sense when you actually start asking questions about it. I mean, like how asinine is it to say like believe the victims? Like, well, don't you have to like due process? Don't you have to prove that they are in fact a victim? No, no, no. We're just the accusation is the proof. So that's a witch trial, right? I mean, it's like first in time, first in right, the first person. So if a man accuses a woman of something, it's like it's the same. You're gonna believe him because he's the victim, allegedly. Oh, yeah. They didn't really think this one through. So anyway, so the Me Too movement just kind of slowly went away, and Hollywood didn't start policing itself. It hadn't turned around the worldview of Hollywood. It just stopped reporting that kind of abuse. So the de-influence movement mentioned in this article is another break the matrix movement that the left wing accidentally discovers. Every once in a while, they come up with good ideas. Trigger warnings, it might be a fair idea. But the puppet masters won't allow it to get traction. And to be fair, most women are not caring about raging against the machine and turning off the Kardashian media type of thing. A lot of women are deeply addicted to these social media influencers. The left wing hippie anti corporate girl of the 1990s is, I mean, 1990s was a resurgence in that kind of thing. I mean, there's the original 60s and 70s, and then there was a resurgence in the 90s. But that girl drinking out of her Nalgene bottle, and like that was the left wing in the 90s, was really big in environmentalism, tread very lightly, recycle, reduce, reuse. All that is long gone. And then after that, suddenly, like, you saw these left wing people suddenly were on board with buying plastic bottles. Like, every day, oh, we're recycling them. Yeah, but I mean, you could just use like a one bottle and wash it out, and you wouldn't have to produce mountains of plastic, the energy that goes into producing them and then recycling them. Like, all you're doing is increasing your carbon footprint. Yep, that's the modern left wing. We're giving 1% of those plastic bottle donations to Greenpeace or something. None of what you're doing is at one point the left wing was a closed borders group because they knew that like high birth rate, high carbon footprint people didn't make sense if you're an environmentalist. And then those environmental groups all got subverted and corrupted. So now they're environmentalists, but they're supporting high birth rate, high carbon footprint people. Like that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, that's how subversion works. Is somebody comes up with either they slowly take over an organization or they come up with a briefcase full of money. Usually, they'll slowly take over an organization. You look at the SPLC and the ACLU, and you look at them, and over the years you go, oh, so American Civil Liberties Union, but you don't actually protect civil liberties anymore. Yeah, that's right, but we still collect corporate donations. So, yeah, that left wing hippie chick, the super skinny, straight blonde hair hippie chick in the 90s when that resurgence hit, I think it was the Doors movies. It was just part of it. It was all coming up in the 90s. That's long gone. Those girls today, the equivalent, would be glued to the TV watching the propaganda that tells them to hate their tribe. The girls that still think they're dangerous rebels because they have a nose ring and dyed their hair, but they're sucking down the mainstream bread and circuses, which is what the machine wants. They're dangerous rebels, but they're in perfect alignment and accord with Coca-Cola and Bank of America and every mainstream media or social media platform. But you're all saying the same thing. What exactly are you rebelling against? Wouldn't a trad wife and trad conservatism be the actual rebels? No, no. You see, because Bank of America told me. Yeah, that's what I thought. So for many reasons, the influence movement is never going to catch on with young women. It catches on with men, this kind of stuff, much more so because men are more likely to think independently, no offense, because it's just genetics. Men have had millions of years of having to be responsible for making decisions. They had to think independently and deeply because their family and their tribe depended on them, and the higher they rose in their hierarchy, the better thinkers they had to be. Men will do something like a no prawn type of movement, which, believe it or not, used to be a feminist value about 20 to 30 years ago. And then that also got subverted and corrupted. Like, there's nothing that won't get subverted and corrupted if you don't have a core dogma to believe. In the 90s, women were very much against the objectification of people in that industry. now they call themselves, oh, we're pro-sex. So all those beliefs you had in the 90s are just gone? Yeah, that's right. Okay, so in the course of 30 years, like you're believing 180 degrees. So a few years from now, you're like, what abhorrent ideas? Like you just don't have anything. There's just nothing. There's no there. There's just a sailboat without a rudder. So men will do something like that, a no fap or a no prawn movement, and start calling out that industry, which is funny because I mean, it's like the men who are doing it would be lasting from feminists, but they're starting to look at that industry and go like, oh, there's a lot going on in that industry. It seems like more of a weapon of war, and it's weird that feminists aren't on board with calling out that industry. But when they do something like that, the Mary Sue type of women who are deep in the matrix get nervous when a source of something is coming from small groups of men in a massively parallel movement, and that hacker known as 4chan, and it's not coming from their accepted globalist puppet masters in university and media. That's the trusted source for these Mary Sue type of girls. Women are more likely to be followers and not leaders, and left wing women are much more likely to be followers. Ironically enough, right wing women can be leaders even if they don't agree with the concept, because right wing women are thinking in a family, tribal, in group focused sort of way. They're trying to think like men. So think of how dangerous a de influence movement potentially can be. They're telling women to think independently and not just accept Hollywood, Madison Avenue, or the Kardashian mentality of the social media personality. And here they're talking about one little limited area of influence, one facet of the crystal. But once you start saying, oh, so we're not going to trust these influencers, we're going to question this narrative. Once you start that questioning, you go, oh, so what about these other? I mean, what's the media? What's the government? What's the universities? These are all influencers too. It's like we should start questioning them. And suddenly the puppet masters start getting really nervous because they obviously they do not want you asking questions, and they will never allow. I mean, like asking questions is a far right wing dog whistle. The puppet masters will never allow women to think independently, and it's part of the reason. Like when women get married and have kids, they move to the right, which is why the puppet masters have encouraged women to stay single and not have kids, because they're just completely controlled by a left wing narrative, because that becomes their husband, that becomes their family, and their children is the government type of subsidies, and connected to this network of a mainstream media and social media influencers. That becomes a proxy family for them because they don't have a real one. So that's the point of left-wing social media. They control by fear of being dogpiled and labeled, ostracized. The power of left-wing Twitter to control left-wingers by fear is really amazing. The right wing is different. It's endless fighting over the most minor differences, but at least it does usually result in better ideas. And if you're on the left, you're probably laughing at that, but it results in people not being afraid to put ideas forth without being ostracized. You might be personally attacked and called bundles of sticks and whatnot, but the ideas get out there and they get turned over. Where in the left wing, people are very, very afraid to put ideas out there because they know that someone above them in the hierarchy will signal that it's okay to dogpile this person, and they'll scare you back in the center of the herd. So in that regard, the right wing does usually result in better ideas. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, support channel, and subscribe. Start buying me a coffee or Cash App, and I'll see you guys all next episode.